It's the Blood Red podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke. Thanks for joining us. 1 year on from Liverpool's Premier League title triumph, we're going to look back on Jurgen Klopp's dominant Reds. Plus, with news, Jack's the lad for Pep amid a £100 million bid from Man City, as well as interest in Harry Kane. How do the Reds go about wrestling back the title next season? Well, providing the answers, we have Theo Squires, Marcus Banks and David Lynch. Guys, I trust that you're all keeping well, and Theo, I'll come to you first up. Only a year since Liverpool won the title. It feels like an eternity ago.
Yeah, it does. Like, so much has happened in the past year. Just think we were watching it, weren't we, on live on our YouTube channel, watching City Chelsea as it unfolded and it all happened. It's just crazy to think what has happened in the 12 months since. Like, if you'd said then that we'd still be only just getting to a situation where fans could be back inside Anfield, Liverpool would completely miss out on the title, only just get top four, that they'd lose all these centre-backs. And it's just been a crazy year for Liverpool. At least at the edge of it, we can say they made Champions League football, and we can have this little moment going, God, they were really good 12 months ago, weren't they? But yeah, hopefully in 12 months' time, we'll be looking back on another title win.
Oh, I hope so, yeah, fingers crossed. But Lynchy, looking at it, and as I say, somehow it's only a year ago. It feels like a different age, that side that Jurgen Klopp had, romping towards the title. No one was able to kind of get close to them. But then, as Theo says, the year we've had since has been even crazier.
Yeah. I think that sort of element of the football side of things and how much changed and the season that followed it sort of didn't really meet anyone's expectations and was so different because of the injuries and that just defined everything, really, didn't it? But I think what makes it feel even more distant is everything that's going on outside of it, isn't it? I mean, we're hopefully in this country sort of edging towards the end of this pandemic or getting to a point where we can sort of, live with it. And we've been very fortunate with the vaccine rollout. And I think that's just, sort of coloured the way that the whole year's been, really, hasn't it? And you look back, and I was seeing some videos today of, the celebrations outside Anfield, and you look at that and remember thinking at the time, okay, that's, it was fantastic, but also, you had that little bit of anxiety around it and stuff like that. But we're thankfully we're moving away from that sort of scenario now, and I think the main reflection really is on the winning the title. At the time, it was so emotional, and 30 years of hurt and that coming to an end was so huge. And I think now, we've had a season of COVID football essentially in between with all the injuries like we mentioned, and that's been quite difficult to watch at times as well with no fans in. I think everyone's sort of refocused now, aren't they, as we edge hopefully towards a bit of normality to maybe Liverpool doing it again and having fans in there and having that full experience. I think we're far enough away from it now for people to start considering that, that let's try and win it again and have that big party in Anfield that we missed out on.
Yeah, that was, I suppose, the disappointment, wasn't it, Marcus, that obviously fans were outside Anfield and celebrating, but the fact that they had to do it during Project Restart and it wasn't able to sort of get wrapped up in sort of front of a full house, and the title not actually be lifted in front of a full house either.
Yeah, definitely, and it goes and even the parade. Like, I mean, I missed the Madrid parade because I was in. Well, I never had a ticket for the game. I slept on a hill in Madrid after absorbing that night. But even looking at the videos of the parade in Liverpool from afar, it was absolutely blown away. And that's obviously something I was really looking forward to once it started. Edging closer that we're going to do it, and the fans are starting to sing and stuff like that. And that United game is really the point where I thought, we are going to do it. And that the parade, and it was one of the main things I was looking forward to. And Liverpool supporters have been robbed of that moment, really. But, hopefully that can give the team some impetus to, go and do it next year. And hopefully we've got full crowds and we can celebrate almost 2 titles in one.
Yeah, definitely. It's just steady, Marcus. And you saying there, obviously the fans was kind of robbed at the moment. Probably fair to say the team were as well, weren't they? We saw sort of the lift it gave them of celebrating after Madrid. And I mean, even, I suppose, the pain of Kiev, how that spurred them on, and the emotional connection this team has with the supporters. So hopefully, as you say, next season can kind of be the return to normality and return to Liverpool dominance.
Yeah, definitely. And it even goes just beyond the whole. Of course, the title lift was such a huge moment, but there was so many moments in the tail end of that season and this season that, that fans deserved to be in that ground, and the players deserved to share moments like that with the players. I was fortunate enough to be at one of the games for the Firmino header at Anfield, And you could see in his face, and he sprints towards the cop, and I think there was like 3,000 fans in there. But even that moment was just like, it made you feel how much you do value the goal. I love that. That's the Salah goal, the counter-attack goal against Man United, and he took his top off, and that was just a pure moment of euphoria, and that's been robbed for the whole season. And then obviously the pinnacle of that is the title lift, and being robbed at that moment, it's not fair. And you could say that probably does factor into a bit of Liverpool's struggles in this season too, because how do you pick yourself up after having such a hard, it's not even just one season, it's 3 seasons of hard work. You had the Kiev heartbreak, the Madrid triumph, and then you go and best this Manchester City team, but don't get to celebrate it in style and have a proper reward for all your hard work is obviously got to be mentally taxing.
Yeah, for some of the loyal servants as well, because we've seen the send-off Gini Wijnaldum's got, and that's with just 10,000 fans, and we know it didn't go as Liverpool would have wanted. They would have much rather been challenging for silverware and all this, but they did lose some loyal servants at the end of last year. You think of like Adam Lallana, Dejan Lovren, and it's like they didn't get to really be on the pitch. Like Lallana obviously extended his contract so he could be part of the celebrations, but I don't think he got on, did he, after Project Restart? He was an unused sub for the one game when they were getting their hands on the trophy. Dejan Lovren, he's had a roller coaster Liverpool career, but he was a great player when he was on the pitch. He was on form. You think these players have been such a big part of the Jurgen Klopp journey, and right from the very beginning to just getting into the Champions League, just finishing in the top 4, even with Lovren for the Borussia Dortmund game, having the lows of Spurs when he was taken off inside half an hour at Wembley, and then to keep coming back for him to be man of the match in a Champions League final, even though they lost, and to still keep on rising to get all these trophies. And it's like, well, they're never going to come back and get those moments, are they? Because even if there was a situation, I know last year they were talking, we will do the parade sometime. Well, that's probably been and gone now. But even if there was a situation where they could do a parade saying this is this title win as well, you're not going to really be bringing back Adam Lallana, Dejan Lovren. You're not going to be bringing back Gini Wijnaldum to enjoy it with the fans. Wijnaldum was very lucky that he could have this moment with 10,000 fans. But imagine what that would have been if it was a sold-out Anfield, if they were allowed to really enjoy the moment and pay tribute to a loyal servant. But it's one where 10,000 did a great job to basically show one player how much he has meant and how much he's contributed for 5 years for an entire Liverpool fan base. It's just a shame that some other players haven't been able to enjoy that along the way.
Yeah, and Dave, I suppose looking back kind of on that season, there were so many great moments. I think the Mohamed Salah one really sort of does spring to mind, but even the win over Crystal Palace during Project Restart, sort of the icing on top of the cherry on the cake for sort of Liverpool in the way in which they were taking this title by storm. I just wonder now, over sort of the last year, how much these injuries to the players and that psychological impact of the fans not being able to kind of be there for Liverpool may well have kind of stunted the momentum that was building around the club ever since reaching that first Champions League final. It felt as though things were growing to that moment, and this was more than just 11 on the pitch. It was a whole club coming together. But then the pandemic has kind of wiped that slate clean, and it'll be going from a standing start again, will it?
Maybe. I do think it's worth mentioning actually on that at least, when Liverpool fans do look back on that title winning season, I think it's fair to say that Liverpool only needed one more win, didn't they, after Project Restart to effectively seal the title, and they did that. So I think, as much as we look back on it with sadness because of the way that season ended and he didn't get the parade and things like that, it is worth mentioning that there were so many memorable moments where there were fans in there, and thank goodness for that. Thank goodness Liverpool didn't end the 30-year wait maybe last season when it was completely basically played the entire season without fans. I think that's it's worth mentioning that there were those iconic moments, and Liverpool basically did win the title in front of fans. So that was great. In terms of what you say about the momentum, I think regardless of whether fans have been there or not, and that incredibly forgettable season that last campaign was had taken place, I think the injuries would have caused them problems regardless. I think it would have been, maybe it would have been less of a scrap to finish in top 4. They wouldn't have probably had that 6 games on the bounce losing at Anfield with supporters in there, I don't think. But I think the season would have been difficult anyway. I think in terms of it holding the momentum, I think they've only got to look at, maybe Manchester City, for example, as a team who've had a little dip, didn't they, in the season where Liverpool did win the league, and then have come roaring back straight away off the back of it. That can happen to teams. They can have those dips and come straight back. Chelsea have done it a couple of times in the Premier League era, had a season off effectively, and then and then come straight back into title contention. So I think for Liverpool, they've got to think, okay, it was just a freak season with all those injuries and without the fans, and it's not something that's going to repeat, and not allow it to sort of halt the momentum, and just ensure that basically from next season they come back with a full squad. Hopefully just get a bit more fortune with injuries, add a couple more players to positions where they need it, and then just crack on again and be straight back in there challenging for the title again. I think that is a realistic aim.
Theo, it's an interesting point, isn't it? The year off thing that definitely Chelsea have had a number of times in the Roman Abramovich era, and maybe Man City for the season in which Liverpool did win the title, albeit last season's points total. What did they finish on? 86 points wasn't sort of the highest mark that they've reached, certainly under Pep Guardiola. But I just wonder with Liverpool how realistic it is to just sort of say that things can flip back like that, because they don't have the deep pockets of Chelsea and Manchester City. Everything sort of for Liverpool seemingly has to be going right. Players have to avoid injury. The fans play their part. Brilliant manager, brilliant recruitment, and everything kind of has to have aligned for these sort of perfect runs of form we've seen in those 2 seasons where Liverpool first of all came so close to winning it, and then of course did win the title. How easy it's going to be to just snap back to those levels, and let's not forget just how brilliant that side was that won the Premier League title.
Not was, is. Most of this squad is still going strong. Only a couple of those players have left. And granted, you've got a few of them who are edging close to 30 now. But in some cases, that can be the peak of their careers. Like Mohamed Salah, for example, he's going to be in the same boat as Messi and Ronaldo, isn't he? He's not going to suddenly dip at 32. You look at the condition he's in now. He could easily be doing what Ronaldo's doing at the Euros at age 36. And it's one where Liverpool have got such a good team, but they've had injuries before. Like we think of Alisson, he was injured for a large chunk of was it against Norwich on the opening day and all this, and they still won the title. They've still had players who have missed games. Henderson's missed games. Fabinho's missed games. The only issue last year was it was an entire position, and then the team couldn't adapt to that, because when they put, say, Fabinho or Henderson at centre back, they'd go and get injured, and it just killed the whole stability of the team. But this was because they'd had no real summer break, because they'd had to have the project restart, have the later end to the season, have a really short pre-season, and that's when it all built up and the injuries stack up. And they've been playing a lot of football anyway. There are always going to be injuries, and it impacted the whole Premier League. It wasn't just Liverpool. They were just one of the teams that was stung worse. So the big issue is how well these players recover from the long-term layoffs. Like Jordan Henderson, we've only seen glimpses, but he's in decent shape for England. Gareth Southgate says he's in decent shape. But it's the big question mark of what level is Van Dijk coming back to? What level is Joe Gomez coming back to? Joel Matip? But if they come back and they can reach similar levels, there's no reason to think Liverpool won't be fine. Like they should be right up there challenging, and with the fans back in Anfield. Like obviously I've been at Wembley for these games, and it's 22,500 fans, and we know how temperamental an England crowd can be. Like they're booing at the end of the Scotland game. Liverpool fans are just going to be made up to be back inside Anfield. It doesn't matter who they're playing. They're going to be making such a racket week in, week out. They only dropped points in one home game when they won the title. I wouldn't be surprised if they just went and did that again. They went and won every single home game, because the fans are going to give them such a boost. It makes such a difference to players like Roberto Firmino. It is that much of a game changer. It's why we talk about it being a famous atmosphere. It's why they beat Barcelona 4-0 when they were 3-0 down, and all these other famous Anfield European nights. Like you can say, injuries and that they might not get back to the same levels, but all they've got to do is keep the spine of the squad fit for the majority, as you get in most seasons, and they will be right up there challenging again, rest assured.
Theo Squires, the optimist. He is it. He is within. He is within. Marcus, what's your take? Is it, I suppose, taking Theo's point, is it, just a missed year, a year that we wipe from our minds and memories and look back and think, actually, since winning the title, Liverpool have now strengthened the core of the team with Konate, Thiago and Diogo Jota all coming into the side, and they are building and ready to go again? Or do you share my concerns, maybe, that it is going to be an almighty ask to get back to sort of 90 plus points next season?
Yeah, I think it is a tough one, but the signs point to that. On paper, Liverpool should be challenging. Whether they're going to reach that level, as you said before, City only managed 86 points this season, so you'd think with the fans coming back, but also it was an unprecedented amount of injuries at centre back. I lost count of how many centre back combinations they used. I think it was over 20 in the end.
Yeah, I think it was 52. Yeah.
It was ridiculous, and it was unprecedented. And you take a key player like Virgil van Dijk out of the team, and one player out of the team of his quality is going to cause issue. Never mind an entire position. And I think Liverpool's performances in that run into finish third and finish 5 points behind Manchester United, who everyone said have had such an amazing season under Solskjaer, but yet Liverpool only finished 5 points behind them. I think it's there is reason for optimism, and Klopp loves players having a full pre-season. And you think that Van Dijk, Gomez, Matip are all going to get a full pre-season under the belt, Ibrahima, Konate too, with the likes of Harvey Elliott coming back in to inject some new blood, and then Liverpool likely to make a few more signings too. Then I don't see why there's no reason why Liverpool can't be up there again. It's just whether that's enough to compete with City, who are obviously making some big moves in the transfer market themselves.
Yeah, nice point. Let's move on to that then. Lynchy, come to you with that. Man City making moves this week. They've reportedly had a £100 million bid for Harry Kane knocked back by Tottenham. And today we read that they've got a deal for Jack Grealish all lined up ready to go after the Euros. Another £100 million from the club who Pep Guardiola said, I think only at the end of May, that we've not got the money to be spending, but it looks as though City are ready to go again.
Yeah, I think it suggests that FFP is probably finished then, doesn't it? If these sort of figures are being bandied around, which is bad news for Liverpool, and I think bad news for Liverpool's owners, who sort of came into the Premier League hoping that would, give them the basis to compete on a regular basis. I think, to be honest, it'd be great, wouldn't it? I think from a purely neutral perspective, to see two players of that quality go into a Manchester City side that's already absolutely ridiculously good and has one of the best managers in the world. To see that. I just think they'll give them instant improvement in certain areas. I think Harry Kane is, probably going to end up breaking the Premier League goal scoring record, isn't he? And City, if they've had one flaw in recent years, it's that they've lacked a number 9. And then Grealish just adds to the ridiculous reserves of attacking midfielders with quality that they've got, and you can just see him fitting right in there. So I think from that perspective, it'd be fascinating to see how they would get on, and I think it would massively strengthen City. I do think there's a conversation to be had about. It's slightly worrying for the competitiveness of the Premier League if a team is going to be able to do this consistently. Pep Guardiola said Manchester City have got no money. If they're going to end up spending £250 million on two, absolute England stars to add to their starting 11 or to their squad that's already really strong, then I don't see in the long term how anyone competes with them. To be honest, Liverpool have got a lot of money in relative terms. They're a very rich club. They can't get near anything like that. They can't be spending those sort of sums, and I just think we've got to be careful that, okay, maybe I know City fans will push back on the idea of FFP and they don't think it should exist, and that's entirely fair that they believe that, but I do think there's got to be some element of financial control there, because I think if City could just keep doing this and they keep buying the best players from the other Premier League teams who can't compete with them, we're very quickly going to get down the road where we're in a Bayern Munich situation in Germany, aren't we, where it's dominant. It's not even worth putting a bet on at the start of the season who will win the title. It's done and dusted before a ball is even kicked. I think that's really worrying, because the Premier League, for all the things we criticise it about, and there is a lot there to criticise, the greed and the way that the money doesn't filter back through the pyramid or not enough, things like that. I do think there was, in the last 8 years, I think, is it five different winners in the last 8 years, or in the last 9 years maybe. And that's something that English football fans should cherish, even though they obviously hate when the team who they don't support wins it. I think it's a really positive thing, and the idea that Manchester City are going to go and do that now when they've already got such strength and depth is fascinating, but slightly worrying, I think, for the long-term competitiveness of the Premier League.
Yeah, it's 3 title wins in 4 years for them now. And I suppose even adding to those worries and the worries I had before, Theo, so cheer us up, is that Man City may be looking to tread a similar path to Liverpool, reached their first Champions League final, ended in defeat. And now if the immediate response is to a la Liverpool off the back of Kiev going and bringing in Alisson and Fabinho, they're going to go and bring in Kane and Grealish. It's ominous signs, isn't it?
Potentially, because it's very good Manchester City squad. It always is a very good Manchester City squad, and even without those players, granted they do need a number 9, and they've needed a number 9 since Sergio Aguero first started having his injury issues, but they've already got Foden, Sterling, Mahrez, all these players who they go in and do a great job, And then the reports say, oh, they'd be quite happy to, say, sacrifice Mahrez or a Sterling so they could bring in Harry Kane. It's almost suggesting a change of style from Man City, though, maybe going back to Guardiola's tiki-taka at Barcelona, where it's not going to be as much the Liverpool rock and roll, counter-attacking pace out wide. It's just going to be get Grealish, Foden on the ball and keep possession for as long as possible. You've got De Bruyne there as a playmaker and just pass teams to death. And Harry Kane's in the box to get on the end of it. It's a very different style to how Liverpool play under Jurgen Klopp, and then it's which style is best. I think in recent seasons we've seen Jurgen Klopp's style being really effective, and it can still do the job. Like if Liverpool need to replace these players, they're not going to need to spend 100 million to bring them in. Like we saw them get Diogo Jota for 45 million. Part of the reason why Grealish and Kane are going for so much is that Premier League English pedigree. It's like that costs more, and it's always going to be a case that if Man City are after your top English players, they're going to have to spend that sort of figure. So I think it doesn't stop Liverpool strengthening when the time comes when they need to replace a Mane, Firmino, a Salah, or any of these players. The only concern you've got there is there will be a time when Liverpool need to bring in English players. Granted, their approach to the market was to say go for a Harvey Elliott so they can have them in the academy and bring them through and have that depth there. But the homegrown rules are still there. Like FFP might not be counting, but the homegrown rules are still very much there. You still have to fill that quota. And it's just a tough one where if the best English talent is just going to be snapped up by Manchester City, so Liverpool have to go abroad, what are they going to do? Like we've seen that with the centre-backs already this season, where Ibrahima Konate, Liverpool went and got him for 36 million. That was who they wanted. Fair enough. But they've been linked with Ben White for a good 18 months now. And if he's going Arsenal potentially for 45, 50 million, and that's a player who's got one season of Premier League football, only played once or twice for England, it makes that much of a difference in the market. It is 15, 20 million pounds, and that's where Liverpool can fall behind when they're trying to strengthen, when they're trying to keep the squad in contention, if the owners don't have deep enough pockets, which I think we can all agree that they don't at the moment. If only there was some sort of European Super League where all the top teams are in it together and they're getting much more of the pot and they're all on a level playing field. But we'll save that debate for another day.
Yeah, well, if you're for the Super League, you're going to get kicked out. Yeah, you're going to get kicked out very quickly. And also, Ben White's a fantastic player. Marcus, what's your thoughts? Concerned as to sort of City and I suppose this change of approach from them if they do bring in Jack Grealish, because he's been absolutely brilliant, hasn't he, for the 2 seasons he's been back in the Premier League with Villa?
It should be concerning for the competitiveness of the league. And while financial fair play, I don't think was the best thing. There does need to be some sort of. I'm not sure what that is, and I don't really think UEFA are the best, company to implement that, because they're just as clueless with the stuff that they do. But I think there does need to be some sort of regulation to stop deals like this happening and make it a bit fairer. But the Grealish one, I mean, he's obviously a fantastic player, but I did strike me as a bit odd that City, I want to spend 100 million on. Maybe it is homegrown. That is the main reason for it. But they do have an abundance of attacking midfielders anyway, and the likes of Bernardo Silva, who hasn't really had that much of a look in to go and spend 100 million on Grealish, who possibly wouldn't even get into their strongest team, is a bit strange. I think the Kane one obviously makes a lot of sense. He's tailor-made for City, and he probably will break the goal record. He's everything they need, really. But the Grealish one does make is a little bit strange to me. I think he is a player that flourishes being the best player in a good team. I think if he went somewhere like Arsenal, he would really thrive. But City, surrounded by all those superstars, I'm not sure it's the best environment to bring the best out of him. And especially given the 100 million fee, if that sort of fee is being talked about for someone like Erling Haaland, I think that would probably make a bit more sense, just in my opinion. Play 2 up front with Kane and Haaland. If you're spending 100 million, I think that would be a better move. But yeah, it's concerning. But Liverpool,
don't give them ideas, Marcus.
Liverpool have, the Konate signing already, solves a key issue in the summer, and it's a long time to go in the transfer window. So, and Liverpool's squad is already strong enough, so it's concerning. But I don't think it guarantees the title.
No, interesting. I think you're reading my mind as well, because Erling Haaland was the next one we're going to move on to, Dave. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's not just Man City splashing the money round. Chelsea seems set on trying to get Erling Haaland. It does seem to sort of be toing and froing at the moment. Paper talk and Dortmund saying they're not going to sell this summer and will hold out till next year when his release clause comes in. But if he's not going to go, one from Dortmund certainly looks like heading off in Jadon Sancho, and Manchester United strengthening there. So not just City, but both Chelsea and United as well looking to spend big.
Yeah, another one where you sort of think, the impact of COVID in financial terms just doesn't seem to apply to some clubs, does it? It's, with Chelsea, I think with Haaland, that is the one area I think they definitely do need to strengthen. I think that Chelsea team will not challenge for the title unless they get an attacker of real quality in, and Haaland's definitely that. I think they did really well to win the Champions League, and it seems weird to talk about the champions of Europe in terms of not being able to challenge for the domestic league. But I do think, Havertz, Werner, Ziyech, Hudson-Odoi, Pulisic, none of those you could rely on as a consistent goal threat next season. That is the one thing that Chelsea team lacks. So if they got Haaland, I think that would make them a real challenger next season. Whether they can do the deal, because obviously Dortmund, have got the stronger hand at the moment with the release clause not really sort of becoming active till next season. So it could take an awful lot of money. And if they really want to stick to the guns, because they're probably going to sell Sancho, then that could make that interesting. Hopefully Chelsea, from a Liverpool perspective, hopefully Chelsea can't get it over the line for that reason. I think with Sancho, again, an interesting one. Definitely something United need is a little bit of that quality out wide. I think Rashford plays out there frequently, doesn't he? But I don't think he's quite as consistent as he would like, in terms of delivering from the left-hand side. And with Sancho as well, gives you the option of coming in off the right, puts a bit less pressure on. Or maybe Greenwood, who's a huge talent, I think, but he's still a very young player, still going to be inconsistent. So if you want to challenge for the title, you need a little bit more. I think the one worry that doesn't maybe get talked about with Sancho, and I think he's brilliant. When I've watched him at Dortmund, watched him with England, really, really like him as a player. I would be slightly concerned if I was Manchester United and I was about to pay 90 million, something around there for a player like that. The recently Bundesliga imports who play in the forward areas haven't completely smashed it in England, have they? I think you look at Havertz and Werner as really good examples of players who were consistently scoring goals in that league and have struggled since they moved. I think Haaland's maybe a different case, because I think he's just a freak of nature, isn't he? And absolutely one-off.
He's been built in a factory, isn't he?
Yeah. He's made to score goals, and I think he will do that wherever he goes. But Sancho, I think you bring him back to the Premier League and in a league where he will maybe get less space and less time. Will he find it as easy to get his goals? I think that would be maybe my one concern if I was Manchester United supporter. But it's from the perspective of these clubs, it's exciting times, isn't it, to be spending this big money on big name players, and I'm sure it's easy for us to do them down, and I still retain confidence that if Liverpool sign a lesser name, that they'll still do very well for them. But there are still question marks, aren't there, over these players and how this summer's going to pan out. It's an interesting one. I think you'd probably rather be in a position of signing the big name players and feeling like you're going to get bang for your buck almost, than being in Liverpool's position where there's going to be question marks.
That's it, isn't it, Theo? It's like all the rich kids going out and splashing their money, and Liverpool having their nose pressed up against the glass, watching them all in there buying these high-ticket items, and Liverpool thinking, well, we've got Curtis Jones, he can replace Gini Wijnaldum, we've got Harvey Elliott, he can come in and supply the sort of supplement the forward line. Do Liverpool's owners need to? We said they've not got the wealth of Man City's, but they're still very, very wealthy owners. Do they need to put their hands deep into their pockets and make a big statement this summer, or is it a case of continuing to do what Liverpool do, box clever and make what might look like unpopular decisions? Felipe Coutinho leaving, no one was all too happy about that, and him not really being replaced like for like. Yet after that, Liverpool went on to this new level. What's your take?
Well, if you go through the teams that we've just been listing with Man City, Chelsea, United, can anyone say what their strongest front three, front four is? Yeah, there are so many good players there, and they have got that depth, but they don't have that breakaway front three that you'll say everyone else is just on the bench. And I think it's almost become a problem for Liverpool that Diogo Jota was the first player who's really ever had that chance of breaking up the front three. It's what you can see why Liverpool owners don't want to, even if they have the money, to go and spend 100 million on even a Jadon Sancho, because does he start ahead of Salah? Does he start ahead of Sadio Mane? Liverpool's front three are very good. You could say if they were in a market where they could get Harry Kane, you might start him ahead of Roberto Firmino. But Klopp's got so much faith in the players he's got, and Liverpool have to be clever with how they go and recruit options. Like they've got this very set starting 11. I think all the big four teams that you can say, what Liverpool's strongest 11 would be if everyone's fit, everyone's on form. And you can't really say that for any of the others. Like we've not mentioned Anthony Martial for United yet. And there's just so much depth in all these clubs. And it probably cost Liverpool that they didn't have that last year. The players that they do have in reserve, like Naby Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Xherdan Shaqiri, were picking up injuries. Is it just a case of the grass is always greener? Like if we had Shaqiri injury-free, Oxlade-Chamberlain injury-free for a full season, and they were coming in, there was a bit more rotation, you could really see what they're about. Would they be suitable replacements as these alternatives to these lesser players like Ziyech at Chelsea? Like they've got talent, that's why they're at the club. They've done all this ability for them in the past. Like Shaqiri's won them games, Oxlade-Chamberlain's won them games. We know there is a player somewhere inside Naby Keita. We just need to see it consistently. And then it's what do Liverpool do? Like they've got to either stick or twist on these players now, because they can't just keep them as these squad options, hoping that they can finally step up and stay injury free if they keep picking up the injuries. But that means the transfer fee is going to go down, and if the transfer fee for them is going down and they can't move them on, then they're stuck in that position where they can't bring in new players to replace them. And then it comes to the actual first choice front three. You're in that position where you have to sell Salah or Mane when the price is at its highest, so you can refinance the whole side again. And I know FSG gets stick for that's their way of doing things, that they won't just go, right, here, Jurgen, here's 200 million, go and add to what you've already got. But they've never done that. Like you think when they signed Luis Suarez, it was off the back of selling Torres. When they signed Van Dijk and Alisson, it was off the back of selling Coutinho. It might not be popular, but it has kept them within the reach of Manchester City. It has won them a Premier League. It has won them a Champions League. And if it hadn't been for COVID last season and the pandemic, they would have been close to the title with all the injuries. They should have been in a title race last season, and they were for the first half of it before it all came unstuck. They just need to find a way to stay on that level playing field. Got there. And they've got the talent. They just need to see what they can do. Like it doesn't matter who they sign. That front three is very hard to improve on.
Playing devil's advocate then, Marcus, and Liverpool supporters may be listening to this and knowing that FSG do have money. They're obviously in it to make money themselves, but football fans don't care about that. They want to see their team winning. Why can't Liverpool compete for Harry Kane?
Yeah, that is obviously the debate that rages on, but it's clear for all to see, as Theo said, that FSG's model is sustainability and not taking money out of the club, but not necessarily investing masses of it, but any money that Liverpool made is reinvested. Whether that model is sustainable for year after year challenging the likes of Man City, I don't think it is. And whether that's on that, they need to look at changing, especially like we mentioned before, all the rivals are looking to make statements in the transfer market, and it's looking like next year's title could be more competitive than it has been in other years, and whether that signals a change of maybe needing to inject a bit more cash to allow Klopp to. Because no one can argue that Liverpool haven't been successful under FSG and their model, but I don't know how much of that is down to the model or to the fact that they've got a manager like Jurgen Klopp who's capable of working with, what he's got, and obviously Klopp likes having a small squad and working with the players and rather developing players and bringing the best out of those already at the club. But I think we are reaching that point now where 3 or 4 players, really quality squad options to replace the likes of Origi, Shaqiri, who maybe haven't been available or, hitting the heights that squad players really need to do is what Liverpool needs to close that gap to City, especially if they are going to go and spend 250 million on 2 world-class players. Liverpool are going to need options, and is it going to be enough to rely on those in reserve, and as Klopp has done in the past, players like James Milner, filling in at right back if Nico Williams leaves, are we gonna go into another season with, saying he can do a job there, rather than going out and buying 3 or 4 quality players who can come in, give those who are starting a bit of a boost and give Klopp some options going forward.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe a case of cementing Liverpool's status stage, maybe punched above their weight to get to over the last few years. But anyway, let's move on to sort of our final point. I suppose key to it all as well, Lynchy, will be sort of preparation and getting everything prepared to go for next season, and key to that, pre-season plans. And the little matter of the Olympics. And you can tell us Ibrahima, Konate, Takumi, Minamino and Mohamed Salah all were sort of being spoken about of going away to the Olympics, but Liverpool putting their foot down, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it's less a case maybe of Liverpool just outright saying no. I think the way it was put to me is that this has been ongoing discussions really with not just the players' representatives and the players themselves, but also the national FAs and Liverpool. They like to take a light touch in these matters because there's no point turning it into a battle or a confrontation. I think with the case of maybe Konate probably been quite an easier sell just because I know the French FA are actually having a bit of trouble trying to get a squad together because it's not a FIFA tournament. Clubs can just outright say no. So, in the case of France, maybe the Olympics is not seen as hugely important. I think with Minamino, obviously, he would have liked to have maybe gone to Tokyo and play in the home Olympics. But I think their three that they were going to pick has been settled for quite some time now. And Minamino, I think maybe he's got this summer, so I think that's taken precedence. And with Salah, I think that was maybe the most difficult conversation because I think to Egypt, and you can see from the Egyptian FA president's words recently that actually means a lot to them this Olympics, and that they do want their star player there. But I think with it being an AFCON year, I think Liverpool have just said, look, it's just not realistic for us to lose you for pre-season and probably the start of the season, and then we've got to lose you in January as well. And I think the players probably been accepting of that as well. I think the AFCON has got to take precedence in that sort of situation, and that's been the way it's been discussed. I don't think there's been any sort of standoff. I don't think there's any bad blood between players and clubs because of how this has panned out. I think just adult conversations basically about and being realistic about how this is going to work. And I think for Salah, in another year maybe you could have made the case to go, but with him being missing in January, it was just never realistic. And I think that's been accepted for a while, even though like I say, the Egyptian FA president has said that Salah will make a final push. I think both every side that's involved in it knows that that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and it I suppose then goes to highlight the point, Theo, that we sort of immediately quash any of those sort of rumour mill chats of Mohamed Salah not being sort of contented at Liverpool and things, that if he is completely obviously on board with this decision, as Dave says he is, he's going to be sort of primary to Liverpool trying to get this title back.
Yeah, definitely. Like, he's been a key goal threat ever since he's joined the club. And it's one where you look at the situation, what chance did Egypt realistically have of going and winning the Olympics? They've got strong competition there. I think he played in the 2012 Olympics, didn't he, in London, and they didn't get anywhere close to that gold medal. But he's captain of the national team now, I think. So Africa Cup of Nations, he'll be trying to win that instead. I know he's got great pride in representing Egypt, but that one has got to be more important for him than trying to get an Olympic gold medal. And I think it's probably for the best for him to, if you're going to have that disruption. Granted, I know with the Cup of Nations we're saying that's only missing 2 Premier League games, but it's very much a big ask to go all the way to Japan, where I don't think they're letting fans in for the Olympics, are they? So it's still a bit dodgy with the pandemic. And granted, Euro 2020 has gone ahead with fans, and there haven't been too many slip-ups there. It seems to be all going quite smoothly. But then you compare it to Brazil and the Copa America, where you've had host countries have had that taken them off them because of the pandemic, where it probably shouldn't be in Brazil because they've got such high rates at the moment. I think if Liverpool could have had a choice, they'd have probably said to the 3 Brazilian boys, you're not going to the Copa America, just because of the whole health around it as well and their safety. And there's just so many uncertain things that have happened in the past year that you can see why they've taken this decision to protect their players. And it does make sense from each on an individual basis. Like Minamino, that's the one that surprises me, just because it's in Tokyo and you think he'd want to play for them. He's not had much football at Southampton or at Liverpool. But with Konate, he played in the under-21s as well, didn't he, earlier in the summer? Granted, it wasn't as long as he would have liked. They got knocked out early on in the knockout stages. But he's still going to a new club and he needs to settle in. It's going to be such an important spell for Liverpool to have this full pre-season with the majority of the squad, where it's only going to be a few of the Europeans and the Brazilian lads. Most of that spine is still going to be there, thanks to Van Dijk coming back from injury, Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane still being there. It's just an important time for Liverpool for them to take that first step in the title race. They can't sacrifice it just to keep Mohamed Salah a little bit happy about a medal that he probably won't win.
Fair point at the end there. Marcus, it's only 7 weeks now till the Premier League season starts. I can't wait for it to get underway now. But it is all about sort of the preparation and planning that Liverpool put in even prior to getting back for pre-season.
Yeah, and we know how much Klopp values a pre-season, especially with his new signings, which I think would be huge for Ibrahima Konate. Because we don't know exactly what role he's going to play, but if Liverpool to spend 36 million on a centre back, you think he's probably going to start or at least be in contention with Van Dijk and Gomez for the starting spot. And we also don't know, like as Theo mentioned earlier, how Matip, Van Dijk and Gomez are going to recover from these long-term injuries. So it could well be the case that Konate finds himself as a first choice centre back on the opening day of the season. And I think pre-season will be crucial into how Van Dijk and Gomez specifically after such a long layoff will recover, and if they can, Liverpool can work the magic in pre-season and get those two fit and ready for the first game of the season, with the possibility of Konate starting alongside them, getting Thiago in, and because I think next season for Thiago is going to be the big one where we really see him in that side with Van Dijk and Gomez back and really get the best out of Thiago. I think it's going to be crucial for Liverpool to hit the ground running and really send a strong message at the start of the season. Like, last season was a fluke. The boys are back sort of thing. Everyone's back and fit and ready, and let's have another go at the title.
Yeah, 7 weeks to go. Can't wait for it. Let's wait and see if Liverpool can indeed mount that title challenge and wrestle back their Premier League crown from Manchester City. That's it from us for this edition of the Blood Red podcast. Don't forget, you can find a link to our Blood Red Club in the description of the podcast. Do just click through to there. Send in your email address and our exclusive Blood Red Club content will find its way directly to your inbox each week. But from myself, Guy Clarke, David Lynch, Theo Squires and Marcus Banks, thanks for your time and your company. It's bye for now.